Hello and welcome to the Surgical Spirit podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Haidar Al-hakim, the Third Eye Doctor. Pull up a chair and get ready for some candid and uncompromising discussion with experts, innovators, agitators, and influential people from every corner of health and well-being. From inside the hospital to at home in the kitchen, we're leaving no stone unturned in our quest to uncover the secrets of healthier, happier, more successful, and less stressful lives. Thank you so much for joining us, and without further ado, let's meet this episode's guest. Hello, Dr. Yasir. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Thanks, Haidar.
Well, thanks for coming on today. I heard you on a group, an organization of Iraqi doctors here in the UK. I think the whole population is a doctor in Iraq. You know, it's like the parents' dream, isn't it, that their sons and daughters become doctors?
Absolutely. You know, it's considered, you know, a big achievement, not only to the person, but to the whole family. Yeah. And I remember when I got the high marks at the end of what is the equivalent to A levels in the UK, I had doubts that I want to be a doctor. I had only one uncle who was a doctor, and he seems to be working very hard. So I didn't like being a doctor, but I really liked to be a dentist because I had a cousin who was a dentist, and he seems to be very happy. So I thought to myself, can I apply to be a dentist? And then my family said, no, it's either a doctor or nothing. So what I did, you know, when you fill the form about your preferences, which university you want to go to, I put as the first preference, College of Medicine, Baghdad University. And then the second preference was the School of Dentistry in Baghdad University. So I didn't put different medical schools in Iraq. I just put the first choice as a, you know, medical school, second choice to be a dentist. And this was very bizarre because many people would put another medical school in Baghdad. For example, we had the Mustansariya. But yeah, I felt influenced by my family's wishes to be a doctor. And this just shows you how much, you know, families and parents, you know, highly value being a doctor.
Was it more sort of mother or father that was influencing you more?
Both of them.
Yeah.
And everyone, actually. Everyone said, no, you know, you have to be a doctor. You got your grades, you got good marks, you have to be a doctor. And I remember when we went for the interview for the kind of medical school application, they asked me, why do you want to be a doctor? You know, the panel. And I said, because my uncle is a doctor. That's it. And they, you know, unfortunately, it's a tick box exercise, and, you know, they approved my application. But here in the UK, it's completely different because, you know, the applicant to the medical school will go through an interview process and stations, you know, stations about personal statements, stations about discussing with them and medical, legal, or ethical issues. And they, you know, they do the UK CAT test as well. So it's not easy to be a doctor in this country, but it could be easier in our countries.
Yeah. I mean, I think society is predicated there on status, and particularly knowledge status and financial status. And, you know, doctors have clout in Iraq, you know, both financially and politically. And that's been there for a long time. Yeah, it's a parent's dream, isn't it? An Iraqi parent's dream that all their kids become doctors, all of them, not a single one is to do whatever they want. But, you know, maybe attitudes have changed now. You know, I mean, I'm a parent now, and none of my children are doctors. And but, you know, I mean, I live here in the UK, and as you said, you know, the living in the UK is totally different. You know, not like back home, which is very segmented and you know, everyone's put in a box, I guess, back home. So, so your uncle's a doctor, and your parents are not doctors.
No, my uncle was the first doctor in the family ever. So we never had any doctor in the family for
And he was
decades. And
treated
then
like
my
a
uncle,
celebrity.
uh, I don't think so, because when I'm thinking about it, it was the 1990s, in Iraq.
Yeah.
Doctors were paid very little. So
Yeah.
although there is this huge respect for being a doctor, but it wasn't a good paid job. And I think the audience will be surprised to have more information about the doctor's salary in Iraq during the sanctions. It was equivalent, I can't remember, $3-4 a month, something like that. Extremely low paid job. So he wasn't really treated as a celebrity. He spent a lot of time in the army, so serving in the army, serving outside of Baghdad, and then came back to Baghdad. And then there were all these economic difficulties, and I think, thinking about it now, I think that's one of the reasons I didn't want to be a doctor when I finished high school, because I thought it's a low paid job and it's really hard job. And maybe being a dentist, kind of seeing my cousin, his way of life, more comfortable, more easy and relaxed, I thought maybe a dentist would be better. But having said that, sorry, I never regretted.
Fast cars, fast women, it's a nice lifestyle for our dentist colleagues.
I mean, my cousin didn't have that, but definitely he was more comfortable and more relaxed than my uncle. But as I said, honestly, Haidar, I never regretted that, because I think being a doctor helped me along the way in so many ways. So for example, just a simple example, if I wasn't a doctor, I wouldn't be able to leave Iraq in 2005 and then work in Yemen and then do a little bit of work in Egypt and then come to the UK as a doctor. I wouldn't be able to do all of this if I wasn't a doctor.
Yeah. I mean, just thinking about the 90s in Iraq, it was quite horrendous. Tell us more about, what happened in the 90s, you growing up in Iraq during the sanctions.
Yes, really difficult, Haidar, because at that time I was a teenager. I was 12, 13 years old, and you kind of you don't take things and kind of analyze them. You just take things as they are. But definitely what comes to my mind when I remember that that period, 1990 to 2003, is this kind of extreme difficulty in getting anything and everything. So extreme difficulty in buying new clothes, for example, buying new shoes. I remember I used to go to the medical school in Iraq, and I had a hole in my shoe, and I would go there, and I would take 3 buses, to go to university, because we couldn't afford to, have a car or, have someone to take me there. Food was really very limited. We had the ration, so the monthly ration. And again, things were extremely expensive if you want to buy them from the market. I remember I haven't really actually eaten, things like banana or apples until 2003. So yeah, just extreme difficulty in getting anything. But at the same time, you are not feeling as if you are suffering or, you are going to die of hunger or something like that. You were just thinking to yourself, okay, this is the norm. I'm going to do the most out of it. And you get on with it.
What was the kind of plan for you during those times when you were studying in medical school? What was going through your head in terms of future plans? Or was it just a survival thing? Just surviving the next
Honestly,
day?
I think it's just survival,
Yeah.
honestly, Haidar. And as I said, I don't want to overanalyze things, but honestly, you just take every day as it comes.
Yeah.
Yes, we would talk about graduation and, oh, we will be excited, we will be a doctors. But again, we knew when we were students that doctors weren't paid a lot, so we weren't really very eager to graduate. So we were just trying to enjoy and make the most out of the university. Um, so yeah, I didn't think about the future, but I always knew that I will be traveling. I always knew that I will be leaving Iraq. I don't know why, but I think one of the reasons, the khira, when istikhara, I don't know how to say it in English.
Well, it's like kind of flipping a coin, like a sacred coin, maybe, like a special
Exactly,
coin.
exactly. So you think of a decision and you pray, and then you open the Quran and you read the verses. And if the verses encourage you to do this thing, then this is a good thing. If the verses discourages you, so you read between the meaning or between the words of the verses. And every time, or most of the times, I used to do istikhara, I come across the story of Moses, who left Egypt, running away from the people who raised him because he committed a crime, and then he went and then he met his wife, and then he came back to Egypt as a prophet. So most of the times I was doing the istikhara, I will get the story of Moses. Now, statistically speaking, there is a good chance you will get this story because Moses' story has been kind of written repeatedly in the Quran, mentioned repeatedly in the Quran. So it wasn't very unusual thing. But for me, in my thinking at that time, I said, okay, so maybe Allah has kind of decided for me that I will leave my country, I will go somewhere else, I'll become something somewhere else, and then I will go back to my country. So the dream of leaving was always there, and also the dream of returning was always there.
And talking about Prophet Moses, what is it about his character that really inspired you and really spoke to you?
The his extreme ability to adapt, to cope, because this is a man who was raised with the pharaoh. Um, this is one of the things you need to correct me sometimes, Haidar. Pronunciation in English. English is still a second language.
Hey, mate,
So
you're in East Anglia, mate. What you
exactly. That doesn't.
Even even the indigenous have difficulty pronouncing things.
But yeah, he was raised, in the courts of the king of the land, and then suddenly he becomes a fugitive, and he copes with that. And I think the verse that describe him, because when he left Egypt, he didn't eat or have something to drink for a few nights, and he was saying, he sat down near the well where the people came to take the water, and he met his wife there, his future wife. So he sat near the well and said, Rabbi inni lema anzalta ilayya min khayrin faqir. So he was kind of asking Allah to give him a little bit, because he's so kind of poor, and he's going through a very difficult time. So that what really inspired me is how this unbelievably strong person coped with this, with this change of status, and then he was able to start from scratch, and then become what he became, and then went back to Egypt.
Yeah, it's a very inspirational story, and from everything to nothing to everything to nothing, and it's a very very profound movement in terms of position in society. Now, what was your kind of profound moment where you thought to yourself, right, I've got to stick it in here because things are really difficult? I mean, the the Iraq War happened at the beginning of this millennium, and that changed everyone's lives. I think the whole world changed, with the Iraqi invasion.
Absolutely. So I guess I was like most of the Iraqis, trying to be optimistic about the new Iraq, so to speak, after the occupation. So we had really horrible times. We lost so many friends and family members, and but we kept saying it will get better. Definitely there is a new system in place. There is new government. They're trying to form the security forces again, the police, the army. So we were always optimistic. And then I started to work in the university, and medical school. So it was really very, very nice period in my life in 2004. And I was working with medical students. And I enjoyed going to the university and meeting medical students, but most of the times I would go, there will be road blocks because there was a suicide kind of attack or something like that. So you kind of deal with this reality, but at the same time you try to stay optimistic. So I married in Baghdad in 2004. I started a family. I had my first child in Baghdad in 2005 in May. But then you reach to a realization that unfortunately things are not going to get better. And in fact, they were getting worse and worse. So in September 2005, my father was kidnapped from our home, and he's still a missing person. And I think at that time we decided, that's, enough is enough. We need to leave.
And your dad is a military man or a?
He was a retired army officer, Haidar, and he worked, of course, in the Ba'ath Party at that time. Most Iraqis did to make a living. He worked in Al-Sadr city, or what used to be called Saddam city or Al-Thawra city, and he had excellent connections with the local community there. So he knew the people, and they kind of gave him not a guarantee, but a reassurance that he will not be harmed, because he helped so many people, including people who were in the Hausa, for example, and things like that. But by the way, my background is that we are Musawi, so we are also Shia and Sada, and my father, was highly respected in that community. So they never looked at him as someone who was, part of the government being there to write reports about them and prosecute the community. Some of our families still live in Al-Sadr city. They are very well known there. So he kind of felt reassured that he doesn't need to leave Iraq, as most of the Ba'ath Party members left. But unfortunately, he was wrong, and it wasn't from the community that that kind of reported him. We think maybe some other kind of political parties were, kind of trying to track down all of Ba'ath members. So it's very interesting, Haidar, because at that time my brother was working in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So we were with the new government. So we weren't kind of, labeled as, Ba'athists or Saddamists. And I remember my brother did his best to try to understand who took my father, why they took him. I mean, definitely they were men in kind of military uniforms, but there was absolutely no trace of him and some of the other people who were taken at that night.
I mean, were you there at the time when it happened?
No, I wasn't, because at that time I married and moved to live with my in-laws, which was in near Al-Jadriya, and my family home was in Al-Baladiyat in Baghdad.
Yeah, and traveling in Baghdad is notoriously very, very difficult. You know, it takes hours and hours to travel between neighborhoods, and most of it is there's lots of blockades as well between townships, and also there's this divide. This is Sunni, this is Shia, this is this clan, this is this clan, this is this political party, and it's sort of turned into, you know, quite a divide, unfortunately. You know, particularly during that time, you know, back in 2004-5, where it was very divisional.
Absolutely, absolutely. Haidar.
Yeah, and you know, your dad was the figurehead, so to speak.
In what way? Sorry.
You know, figurehead of the family,
Oh
bringing
yes.
people together. You know, captain of the ship.
Absolutely, because he was the oldest among his siblings. He had, now this is a test for my memory, but he had 7 siblings, 7 brothers and sisters, and he was the oldest. So yeah, definitely he was a figurehead in that regard, and also in our household, and also in his work. As I said, kind of people looked at him with respect, with kind of appreciation, and the fact that he was a Shia working in a Shia neighborhood during Saddam's kind of regime. That makes sense.
Yeah, and
Mm.
I mean, I don't know what the ultimate political aim of what happened in Iraq, you know, in this sort of invasion and sort of change of Iraq, but certainly division was top of the agenda,
Yeah,
you know, for Iraq, and this was the best way to create increased division between people who bring. I mean, if someone brings people together, that's the
mm,
best solution for a country like that. But instead, you had other individuals who got rid of them, people who brought factions together. And you know, we've always had differences in our country, but we've always found ways of living together for a very long time.
absolutely.
And you know, this thing about conflict, I mean, conflict never finishes. You know, you've always got to find ways of reconciling the conflict.
Absolutely. And I talk to my friends a lot about that, people who are in Iraq, uh, and I give them the example of what happened in South Africa, for example. People just, said, okay, enough is enough with violence. We are not going to take revenge of, people responsible for the crimes that were committed against local population. Let's just have massive forgiveness and start again. And I think in Iraq there was kind of some thoughts about that, but did not really materialize. So you still have this kind of de-Baathification movement. You still have lots of hatred towards people who were working with Saddam Hussein. So unfortunately, we didn't reach to that level. And when I ask my friends why, who are in Iraq, they say because the Baathists never showed regret for what they have done to the people. And I think this is a bit of exaggeration. I think there was an acknowledgement, maybe not all of them, but there was an acknowledgement that what they have done really took the country in the wrong direction, put the country in different wars and conflicts. Um, but yeah, that's one of the things that Iraqis talk about, is that there was no real regret from Baathists, and therefore we should continue, to have these measures in place to prevent them from returning to the government in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I mean, they seriously need to think about reconciliation
Yeah,
at every level. You know, healing starts with putting everything down and and starting fresh and new. Otherwise, the wound will continue. You know, and this wound is continuously bleeding. You know, because they haven't reconciled yet. Um, you know, we are fiery individuals and we're very opinionated and we get very hot-headed, but you know, that's not the answer. And you know, we can see the effects of that continuing in our country. um so you decided, obviously, it was a massive blow, and you felt that that's it. This is the this broke the camel's back, and I need to find some sanity in my life. And how did you end up in the UK? What, how did you find Moses' journey into the UK?
Yes, was really difficult, of course, Haidar, because we are talking about 2005, and there was massive kind of exile of Iraqis from Iraq to all countries in the world, looking for a kind of safe place to live.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I was very lucky because at that time my uncle was living in the UK and he was working as a doctor here, so so that helped a lot. So I did kind of English language exams, and I did the medical licensing exams to be a doctor in the UK. So I came to the UK in 2006 and passed further exams here. But the problem is that there was no jobs for overseas doctors in 2006. This was the year that the UK changed its rules about kind of immigration for doctors. So they put the priority for European doctors. And if no European doctor applied to a job, then you could be considered for this job. So there was absolutely no way I could find the job. So I left the UK in 2006 and went to Yemen because I heard that Yemen is in need of doctors, and they wouldn't put much barriers in front of Iraqis, so we didn't need visa or anything at that time. So I went there and worked for 3 years, and then thankfully the UK was needing more doctors in 2009 because they fully implemented the European Working Time Directive. So they couldn't really ask doctors to work long hours except under special circumstances. And therefore I was able to apply to get a job, do a remote interview from Yemen, and I came to the UK in 2009.
And what was the difference that you noticed between Yemen and working here in the UK?
I'll tell you a funny story, but it's true, honestly, Haidar. One of the simplest things is the size of the hospital. So in Yemen, I was working in a small, tiny hospital. It's like a clinic rather than a hospital, but it did have some, few inpatient beds, and it was like a 2-story building. And in the UK, I worked in Royal Preston Hospital in Preston. It's a huge hospital. And one of the things that kept happening to me is that I kept getting lost in the hospital. So, so I was working in ear, nose, and throat department at that time, and I would get a bleep or a pager to go to the A&E, and then I would find my way to the A&E, but cannot go back to my department. So that's one of the kind of the simplest things, just to show you how different, the two experiences were.
Did you enjoy it in Yemen? What was Yemen like?
Yemen was very beautiful, but towards the end, unfortunately, it wasn't for Iraqis. I wanted to avoid mentioning that, Haidar, because I have all the respect and love for Yemenis and Yemen, but unfortunately, in the last 2 years we were there, things became more difficult because of all this thing with the Houthis in the north at that time. There was a lot of kind of hate towards Shia. So if they know you are a Shia, they will hate you because they will think you are with the Houthis, or you have participated in in the invasion, and you are against Saddam. And they loved Saddam. They still love Saddam until now. So things became more difficult in that they started to get tighter visa regulations for the stay of Iraqis in Yemen. So in 2006, for example, if your visa ran out, you go to the local passport office in your local city, in the city you live in, and you renew it for another year. But in 2007, sorry, 2008 and 9, they forced us to go to Sana'a, to the capital, and to apply in the capital only. And in the capital, they will need to know, all of the information about you and things like that. And one of the documents I had my name as Al Musawi. So, my passport and everything, my surname is Hameed, thankfully. But on that one single document, the officer saw that my surname is Al Musawi. And guess what he did? He threw the document in my face and he said, "You're not welcome here. You are Iranians. We don't like Iranians here." And it was, a moment I will never forget, because when he rejected my application, I had to ride a bus for 5 hours to go back to Ta'az city where I used to work. So imagine 10-hour journey and staying overnight in a hotel, and you come back, feeling defeated and humiliated. So that was live there, unfortunately, Haidar, is that it was really nice. People are friendly, but towards the end, it was unbearable for Iraqis to continue living there.
Yeah. Once the political situation gets involved in daily life, it's horrendous. It's takes that sweet taste out of the mouth very, very quickly. And then you decided to sort of go back to the UK with your uncle. Was that sort of the time where you thought, right, let's do something here differently? Let's do another Moses trip.
Yes, and definitely, because as I said, this incident with the passport officer definitely changed my mind about everything, because at that time we were thinking, oh, maybe our, some of other family members can join us. It's a lovely country. It's a simple country. But that moment was a turning point. So I kept really trying to get back to the UK and keeping an eye on jobs and things like that. And this is why when the opportunity came, I applied and got the interview and left Yemen. But as you mentioned, Haidar, it's all, the political things that ruin our life. Because for someone like me who lived in Yemen for 3 years, I have so many beautiful memories, of the people and the land. But then you cannot forget that single incident. So unfortunately, it kind of ruined the period you lived there. But at the same time, as I said, we kept in touch. I kept in touch with people I've known there.
And, you came to the UK and, you are a foreign graduate here in the UK. What was the kind of obvious racism that you experienced here in the UK, or was there any? Or was it all just, bubbling under the surface, the usual stuff that we all experience because your surname's different?
Yes, yeah, I knew we
you're a consultant now.
Yes.
You're fairly senior now. You don't have to name names, but
yes, no, but I knew we are going to mention racism because I think most of us will experience some form of racism, and I always say, this. I don't believe for a second that this country is racist. This country has, welcomed so many kind of people from different countries, refugees and, all sorts of people came to this country and settled here. So I wouldn't say I experienced racism in a way that would have affected me, but definitely there were these incidents where you felt, for example, that you weren't treated properly by this nurse or this doctor or this patient because you have an accent, because of your surname. I remember once a patient told the nurse, so the nurse went to the patient in his room. It was an inpatient unit. And she said, well, Dr. Hameed is here to see you. And I stayed outside the room just waiting for her to go there. And he said, oh, why don't we have British doctors here? But honestly, I went.
That's an innocent comment as well. I mean, I consider that to be, like a jokey comment. That's because of my mindset, really. you know, and I'd go in there and then I'd play with that as well, just to kind of break down those barriers and sort of break that sort of cultural divide. But other people consider it such a major issue, you know, and they call that, you know, more than a microaggression, they call that a macroaggression maybe, you know, to themselves. Whereas back in our time, you know, we considered it just part and parcel of being here in the UK, whereas now it's treated as a major event. I mean, lots of things have happened since then. But yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, we are guests here, whether we like it or not. And I think, you know, being a guest, I mean, for us, you know, being first generation immigrants, I still consider myself to be a guest here. But I guess the second generation, it's unacceptable because they feel this is home.
Absolutely. There is a lot of subjectivity about this as well. I agree with you, Haidar. And in that incident, I did exactly what you said. I just went and spoke to him, and we had a joke, and we really got on along, you know, very well. But I know doctors, some overseas doctors will get so offended if the person asks them, or the patient asks them, where are you from, doctor? You know, they will say, why are you asking? You know, I'm here, you know, it doesn't matter, or something like that. I would never have such a response. But definitely, you know, when you think about racism, for example, in our countries, Haidar. So for example, in Iraq, and, you know, we Iraqis looked not in a very good way to Palestinians, for example. So I used to live in Baladiyat, and there was a, you know, a building complex for Palestinians there in Baladiyat, and, you know, they had extremely difficult times, especially after 2003. You know, again, if you look at the Arab Gulf, how they treat foreigners, you know, even discrimination is there is normal. So for example, you know, even the laws will say that, you know, citizens will have the priority in this service or something like that. So discrimination is legal in these countries. So I agree with you. We kind of have to look into all of these things in context. And as I said, I don't believe this country is racist. I don't believe most people are racist. But definitely, again, just remembering what happened to me in Yemen, it is these small incidents that for some reason just stick in your mind and just annoys you, and just you think to yourself, oh, why did I have to go through this? You know, if my country was good, I would go to my country and never take this BS.
Yeah. No, yeah. Yeah. But, you know, things have changed a lot better since then, you know, since 2003, 2004. I think people are much more receptive to these aggressions, and, you know, being much more culturally sensitive as well. I mean, my kind of gripe about this is that maybe we're becoming too sensitive, you know, and not letting things happen organically. Do you think we've become a bit too sensitive about these things?
Definitely. And I know maybe someone watching this will think, oh, you know, they are trying to normalize these experiences. That, you know, they are unacceptable, you know, and things like that. But I do feel that we are oversensitive, and, you know, but part of it, you know, if you think about the Black Lives movement, and, you know, what happened, you know, George Floyd, and the increase in discussions about, you know, racism and things like that, and institutional racism in the UK, these were all helpful discussions. These were all helpful things to happen for us, you know, people from minority ethnic groups. But at the same time, as you said, Haidar, it makes you think a lot, and it makes you maybe respond in a more aggressive way to when you perceive the other person as racist.
Yeah, I mean, there is an oversensitization, and, you know, we're fortunate to a certain extent because we are from a minority, and, you know, we have that bit more, you know, allowed to say things whereas the indigenous population may feel a lot more less inclined to talk about their views when it comes to race. And I think that is a disservice. That's a disservice to the indigenous population. And us as being guests here, we should allow them more of a say. But I don't know. I mean, it's a difficult one, and I think, but I think social media has blown this out of the water. I think, because most people are good. Most people are not malicious, and live a decent and inclusive life. I think most people are like that, unless I've painted a rosy picture of people.
I totally agree with you. It's that social media can really kind of exaggerate things and take things out of proportion. So, for example, I remember when there will be an attack on a person because of their ethnicity on a bus, and somebody record this and put it on social media, and people will get so upset. Oh, how this could happen in our streets, in our buses? Why no one interfered to stop this? And you think to yourself, oh my God, I may be a victim of such an attack soon, because it's all over the news, it's all over social media. So it does make you hyper vigilant that you will be under attack because of these rare incidents that are that will be happening and then will be recorded. But as I said, honestly, Haidar, the way I look at it is that, yes, there is some form of discrimination. There is some people who would never accept people like you or me living here and working here. But as you mentioned, they are the minority. The majority of people kind of welcome the contribution that we bring to this country, respect the law. So even if they have racist views, they know that this is against the law, to be racist. And therefore we can have a space really to thrive and be part of the society and be proud that we are British citizens.
I mean, having that sort of colorful society is a beneficial thing. And one of the great things about Iraqi society was that it was so colorful and it was made up of different people, and at the end of the day they came together, they reconciled each other's differences in order for a common country goal. And that's something that has been lost over the years, and over the many wars. And I hope this doesn't happen here, through the many wars of Brexit and COVID and I don't know, the royal family, or whatever the latest football team. I mean, I hate Man United fans. I can't stand them. I'd rather see them. I mean, I don't want to see them burn, but so I'm definitely anti Man United fans. But at the end of the day, they're human beings. I can't do anything to them. I can. Are you a Man U fan?
I have honestly a very low interest in football, unfortunately, Haidar. For some
come
reason,
on.
I don't
So what
know.
sport are you interested in?
I'm not a sport person at all, unfortunately. So World Cup, I have to see the semi-finals and the finals in World Cup. When England plays, I have to see that. So I was very proud of our last game with the Czech Republic. But apart from these major events, I wouldn't be following the league and following the individual teams, unfortunately. No.
So no sport. There must be something that movies. What is it? What is it that you enjoy doing, watching?
Documentaries. Haydn. I love them. I remember binging so many documentaries about the war in Iraq. Because it just gives you this, reinforces your belief that history repeats itself and we don't learn from history.
Right. I mean, we're coming towards the end of the podcast. What are the sort of things that you think history is repeating itself and we're not learning from? What are your 3 things that you've noticed that we keep repeating ourselves from history?
Wars, really, conflict. especially when Western countries participate in wars to change the regime, even the most corrupted regime in any country, you cannot just send troops and change, the government or the dictator and then hope that a democracy will flourish in that country. So definitely that, the issue of war. The second issue, probably related to the first one, is violence. Violence is not the answer at all. So if you are part of a political party or a movement that promotes violence against other people, you must know that you are going to fail. Even if you reach power and you achieve things, you will fail if your ideology is based on violence and based on kind of minimizing other people. And the third thing that is very painful thing, honestly, Haidar, is the loss of human lives and suffering as a result of all of these bad decisions by the governments over the years. So many people were killed, fled their countries, tortured, for bad decisions. I remember watching an extended documentary on the Iraq-Iranian war, and you see those young people killed and taken into, really captured as kind of prisoners of war on both sides, and you see the misery in their faces. The human cost of a bad decision by someone in the government are so huge and so sad.
And well, let's end on a bright note. Having said all of these things, how do you keep smiling and have a big smile on your face, and you're quite lighthearted, really.
Thank you. I think the most important thing is really the family. So I'm really very lucky to have a very supportive wife and children, lovely children, and pets as well. I have a cat, makes me laugh all the time, honestly, Haidar. And I always tell my patients, if you don't have a pet, please have a pet. Having a pet in your life is really helpful. And just being grateful for what you have, on everyday basis, Haidar. Just thanking Allah that you have a house, you have a job, you have other things that you can do, you have friends. All of these things really help.
You have hair. I'm thankful I've got some
Yes.
hair. Yeah.
Yes.
Even though it's falling out and it's graying, at least I've still got something to shave.
Exactly. For me, the glass is always half full rather than half empty.
True. Yeah, you've got a glass as well. Even if it's empty, you've got a glass waiting for
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How can people get hold of you? What's the best way, Dr. Yasir?
So I have a YouTube channel, Yasir Hameed Psychiatry. I have about 6,000 subscribers, so not that bad. They can reach me through the YouTube channel and also through the Facebook page, which is الأمراض النفسية بالعربي or Arab Psychiatry.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Yasir. It's been a great pleasure. Thank you.
It is my pleasure. Thank you so much, Haidar. Thank you.